And it's good to see all of you this morning at the intersection between faith, community, and our civic engagement. We're in the middle of a series going through the last half a dozen years of collaboration, some much longer, by the way, but just getting an update of all the different collaborative work, where it's at, where it's headed, how we can be involved, and then putting that online so that others can be engaged. You might even run into people who want to know what's happening in terms of housing or violence prevention, and then you'll be able to point them to these videos and say, you need to watch this. It'll kind of bring you up to date, and then we can get going. So it should help move us all forward a little bit more and keep building these collaborative relationships. So we want to hear as much as possible from Rob, and but we also want to get as many people in the room as possible too. So in case there's a couple announcements, brief ones, I'd be open to those. I want to remind all of us that No Mas is happening at the end of this month. I think it's the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, and that's on domestic violence. At the same time is the Pathways to Hope Mental Wellness Conference, our annual conference on the 23rd and 24th at the Tobin. I'm sure that those things will be put into chat at some point where you can register. So those are those upcoming big gatherings that are happening this month. Next week, because I know some will be leaving early, next week in this series, we'll be moving into housing. And we're going to watch a film together next week that the HEB Foundation has done on Everyone Deserves a Home. And following that, we're going to be hearing from the congregational community efforts in terms of what I call flipping congregations, but taking congregational sites and transforming and transfitting them, not only for housing, but we'll be hearing about the housing in particular, but for other uses as well, towards greater community. And then the following week in that series, we'll be hearing from the Chief Housing Officer, Mark Carmona, and he'll be bringing us up to date on the Strategic Housing Implementation Plan, the SHIP for San Antonio. One more announcement, maybe, anyone?
That was a lot.
Tomorrow, 12 noon, the University of the Incarnate Word School of Medicine, we're going to have an interfaith service dedicate a sculpture called Spirit Fire and remembering the spirit active in all faiths and the spirit which can give energy and love to our medical students and all of us. And I'll be a little bit more personal and say, I was given a gorgeous 300-pound marble sculpture, but it was too big for a nun's bedroom. So tomorrow, 12 noon at our medical school.
Oh, Martha Ann, so good. Yeah, it is a lot, Rob. We've been doing some great things here in San Antonio. I'm so proud of our community and collaboration and meeting the most vulnerable needs of our city and, giving compassionate care and really expanding what the word compassion means. And not really expanding, but expanding our understanding of what compassion means. So the implementation of it, it is the action word in all of that. Empathy is that feeling and knowing the struggling and the suffering, but compassion's that antidote. It's the action word where we work together and work on solutions that end some of the suffering and actually help us to move ahead more fully in life. So it's great to have my dear friend and brother, Rob Mueller, with us this morning. We figured out this morning that we've been working together for 3 decades, and yes, that makes us older. But it's really great to have you here, and I know he's taken on this gun violence is one of his specific ways to make a change in the world. And so thanks for being with us, Rob. And I know you're going to share with us just a little history, but where things are now, how people can get involved. And we brought some friends and a stepson along. So let's hear it.
All right. I guess the first thing to just let you know about me, those of you who don't know me yet, I'm the pastor at Divine Redeemer Presbyterian Church, which is a small bilingual church on the west side of San Antonio, near West Side, where I've experienced more than any pastor should of gun violence, although most pastors probably have all experienced gun violence touching them in one way or another. I am also a gun owner. I grew up with guns. My dad was a lifelong NRA member. I got my first rifle when I was a preteen. It was a hunting rifle, but I own a shotgun, I own a pellet gun, I own a deer rifle, I own a couple of handguns, all of which are stored safely in safes in my home. And because of that posture, the way I like to talk about gun violence is to talk about gun safety. One of the challenges that we've had in our country over time has been the language that we use to talk about this issue. And when it got positioned as a gun control versus gun rights issue, we lost track of the middle ground that is available to us. And that middle ground is around gun safety. Because we live in a country with a Second Amendment, like we do, it's going to be impossible for us to remove guns from our environment. But what is possible is for us to talk together about the middle ground of gun safety, and that's kind of how I would like to pitch our conversation today. When Uvalde occurred, it was a last straw for me around the amount of gun violence that I had seen and experienced. In my time as a pastor, I have had young people shot walking their girlfriends home by rival gang members. I have seen, I had a 21-year-old who was shot through her pickup truck as she was leaving a bar by a guy whose advances she had spurned and was killed. I have had a half dozen middle-aged men commit suicide with weapons. I was a material witness to a murder catty corner from the back piece of our property when I was working on the property with a retired police officer, member of our congregation. Watched one drug dealer empty a 9mm weapon into the body of another drug dealer. And that prompted me to be engaged and aware of the anxiety and fear that a lot of the folks in my community experience when things like that happen. We had 100 people in line for food boxes that morning, 10 o'clock Tuesday morning when that happened, and utilized that fear that I experienced. That was what my people in my community experienced every time something like that happened, to catalyze an effort to try and shut down some of the drug dealing that was going on in our community. So I offered to be the channel of information. I was now a known commodity to the drug dealers in the community. They knew I was willing to talk to the police already. So I thought, well, I'm going to keep talking to the police. So I did. Those are some of the experiences that I've had dealing with gun violence in my career, in my work as a pastor. A few years ago, after Uvalde, we were looking for ways to respond. And together with my stepson, Bobby Watson, who's on the call here. Bobby, wave your hand so people can see who you are. There's Bobby. Bobby was working with Texas Impact in the Austin area. And they were also looking for a way to address gun violence post-Uvalde. And one of the things that we encountered was the experience of a group of folks in the Philadelphia area who started doing memorials. They called them Memorials to the Lost. And it was congregations gathering to create T-shirt memorials where the T-shirts had written on them the names of people in their own community who had been victims of gun violence, who died from gun violence. They focused exclusively on homicides, um, we wanted to look at the broader gun violence picture and include the suicide component, because the numbers around gun violence indicate that about half of the gun violence deaths in our country are suicides, and the other half are homicides or accidents. And so we created an alternative version of that memorial called Vidas Robadas, or Stolen Lives. And Stolen Lives is an opportunity for a congregation or a school or another institution to raise awareness of the impact of gun violence and just how much it has proliferated within our society. And you do that by getting through Texas Impact. You can get a list of names of people who, in the recent past, we in San Antonio took on the last 5 years of gun violence victims within Bexar County. That number is over 2,700 lives lost in Bexar County alone. To put that in some perspective, my wife and I were leading a conference with another pastor from Canada, and we were talking to him about this project. And he said that in the entire country of Canada, there were less than 1,000 deaths. There were only a few hundred deaths due to gun violence in the entire nation of Canada over that same period of time. So 2,700 in Bexar County alone, a few hundred over that same period of time in the entire country of Canada, which is a country that has people who bear weapons, right? Canada has a hunting culture, and there are a lot of people who have weapons in Canada, but they don't have the issue that we do. So it is a uniquely American problem. So a congregation can get those names from Bobby at Texas Impact. And then in our congregation, we set up the first Vidas Robadas display in San Antonio back last fall. And when we did that, we gathered after church. We had lunch together, and then under our covered pavilion, we set up kind of an assembly line. We had people who were putting cardboard inside the shirts to make it easier to draw on them. We had people who were cutting PVC and putting PVC T-posts together. We had folks driving pieces of rebar into the ground that those T-posts would then sit on. And then we had others who were writing the names of the victims. When we write the names of the victims, we put their name, the date of their death as recorded by the county coroner, and the age of that person when they died. For many folks who do that, it is a very deeply moving experience to be writing the name of someone, writing the date that they died, and writing their age, especially when those ages are 8 months old, 3 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, 16 years old, or perhaps someone who is the same age that you are, and you realize that their life was taken at the moment, at this point in their lives. Another thing that we've discovered as we have invited other congregations into that process is that it is often a very cathartic, especially when we're working in communities of color where much of the gun violence death, many of the gun violence deaths, the majority of them occur. People have a very emotional experience and often want to do a shirt for their own loved one who died due to gun violence. And so we have discovered that it's important to have some pastoral care, some counseling support available for folks when we do these displays in various contexts, because it can be a very emotional and kind of a reliving of a trauma for a lot of people when they engage this. Bobby has got Bob, first of all, I just want to hold Bobby up as a spokesperson around gun violence. If you need somebody to talk about gun violence at an event that you are having, he is the guy to go to. He has done incredibly in-depth research around gun violence, both locally and nationally, and can speak to it and has a very, very eloquent and helpful, articulate discussion about the gun violence history, how we got to where we are, and what some of the ways forward might be in our community. One of the things I learned is that when we were trying to lobby the state legislature around gun violence in Texas, is that the Hobby School of Public Policy did a survey just before the last legislative session, and there were 4 common sense gun safety policies like universal background checks and red flag laws that were supported by more than 65% of the Texas electorate. There are very few issues in Texas that you can get 65% of people to agree on. And even though that is where the electorate stands on that, we cannot get it passed through the legislature because the political will does not exist yet for that to happen. So how does Vidas Robadas fit into that? Vidas Robadas is not just happening in San Antonio, it's happening in Houston, in Austin, and Dallas, and Fort Worth, Texas as well. And in February, in advance of the day of advocacy on gun violence issues in the Capitol, we plan to bring the thousands of shirts that have been created by communities like San Antonio to the state capitol and display them in an effort to make clear not just how many people are dying from gun violence, but how urgent it is that we take action on the common ground that we have around gun safety measures. So that's kind of the big picture. When we do displays, we use colored shirts for the names of victims who have died by homicide. And we use white t-shirts that do not publicize the name because a lot of people feel a sense of shame around the act of suicide. And so we simply put another stolen life or otra vida robada on the shirt. And there you go. And that also carries then the suicide hotline number as a way to advertise that as an opportunity for people to receive help if they need it. So you can see here, these are good examples. And this is a flyer that Bobby created for us in San Antonio to be able to use to let people know what we are doing. Now, on our call today, we have folks who have done this. Sister Martha Ann Kirk helped to organize this at Incarnate Word. And Martha Ann, you might want to share just a little bit about what that experience was like for you all at Incarnate Word as a school site.
Anyway, I was just looking at what Bobby put in the chat box, and you've got a lot of pictures of us at Incarnate Word. So I really want to urge everybody to open up what Bobby put in the chat box. I knew it was going to be extra work, put out tables, markers, clothespins every day. So I was expecting to spend some time doing it. I had no idea that a main administrator at Incarnate Word was going to come up and say the last job I was in, a troubled person came in and shot the boss at that place. And she was obviously still traumatized. And so after, she finished being in her office at 5:00, she came out there on Dewey Lawn and she said to me, may I do a shirt remembering my coworker that we experienced his death? Then a person that's a few doors down from my office, she came to me after the whole thing was over and she said, my brother committed suicide a few months ago. And what you did really helped my daughter, who's a student at Incarnate Word, because when she did one of the white, remembering suicide victim shirts, she did it, especially praying for her uncle. Then when you wanted more activity this year, Mission Concepcion is my parish. So I had it in front of church. And one elderly woman said, "Oh, we are just on the way to the cemetery because one of my nephews had been shot, and we're going to pray at his grave today." And then a little bit later, a group of students came. St. Mary's University is really good doing summer programs with people in other places that are at schools that the Brothers of Mary also have. And this was a young man from Hawaii. And he waited until the other students were gone. And then he said to me, "My brother committed suicide not too long ago. And I am so glad that you have this." So I want to urge everybody, do this. This education is so important, but it may get emotional.
Yeah. The other piece that I would share about
That's a UIW one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marthan. The other piece I would share, because Millie's on the call as well from Councilman Courage's office. Last fall in November, just in advance of the holidays, San Antonio held its first gun exchange event that was spearheaded by Councilman Courage, and another one is being planned for this November. We actually have a meeting coming up very soon about that. But when we did that first event, we had already created in numerous locations in San Antonio about 1,500 of the 2,700 shirts for our community. And we lined them up, we strung them up on clotheslines all along Cherry Street beside the Alamo Dome where the gun exchange was going to be taking place. And so we provided kind of a huge visual impact statement about why exchanging guns, getting rid of guns that people don't want and don't want to have around and don't want to leave accessible to anyone, so that they will be destroyed. And so this gave a reason for kind of a justification for why we're doing this. And it was a very successful and very impactful piece as well. And I don't know, Millie, do you want to say anything about the upcoming piece?
Good morning. Thanks, Reverend Mueller. Yeah, so our event is right now scheduled for November 24th. It's the Sunday before Thanksgiving, same time as last year. Not much is going to be different with it. You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It kind of worked really well last year. So we're thinking about just keeping it the same. We are currently in the process of asking for donations to the Sweet Fund. We were hoping that this would be an event that would be able to be allocated in the city's budget, but that was not able to happen this year. Councilman is still going to allocate $100,000 from his carry forward. But you know, the more money we have in the fund, the more firearms we can get off the streets. So I will actually email you and Reverend Helmke. And I think I saw Dr. Fudakawa on here. Hey, Paul, who's on here somewhere. Yeah. There he is. Yeah. I'll email the information to y'all that has the link and the QR code. So maybe you guys can start blasting that to your congregation and other folks to just let them know that we're definitely going to be doing it again. And the only way that it can be successful is if we raise enough money.
Thanks,
Millie.
Millie.
What were the numbers last year, Millie?
We were
how many weapons?
We got over 900 weapons off the street. And we actually did that in about 3.5 hours. We started the event about 30 minutes early because when we got there was already a line of folks wanting to get rid of their firearms. And we actually had to close early because we ran out of funds. So there was at least like 100, maybe 200 cars of folks that wanted to get rid of their firearms that we just couldn't get because we didn't have the money.
So the last piece I just want to call attention to that's also happening right now. COPS met, our congregation's a member of Communities Organized for Public Service in Metro Alliance. And through that organization, we were able to work with the city to allocate $200,000 for the purchase of handgun safes because one of the other issues that we discovered in San Antonio that's becoming a real problem is the theft of weapons out of vehicles in particular, homes as well, but especially out of vehicles. The proliferation of gun possession has meant that we have a lot of people who own guns who don't have any understanding of how to treat a gun safely or be safe in the storage of that weapon. And so people are leaving their guns in glove boxes, in consoles, under the seat of their car. I have a member of my congregation who is a police officer who left not his service weapon, but his personal weapon under the seat of his car when he went to the jazz festival, came back to his car, only discovered the window had been broken and his weapon was gone, and he still has no idea where it is. And he feels a tremendous amount of shame and guilt about that because he knows that that weapon is now probably being utilized either on this side of the border or the other to do things that he would not want that gun to be doing. So the gun safes, the handgun safes, are available to be distributed at events around the city. And both the city now and the county are putting together events at various periods of time where people are able to pick up a free handgun safe that can be then cabled to the seat of your car so that it won't be able to be opened by anybody and it won't be able to be easily stolen. I have heard numerous people say their car was broken into, my wallet, my money clip, my credit cards were left behind. The only thing they took was my weapon because that is the priority item. And oftentimes it is cartel and gang related groups that are recruiting preteens to engage in this behavior because they know that they won't get as significant a prison or a legal sentence as others. And so these kids are just doing what they're told and making $100 for every weapon that they are able to find in somebody's car and hand over. So those are the efforts that have been at work. And I would love for Bobby to share a little bit more out of his experience and give you guys some windows into what's going on at the larger statewide level.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob, for all of that. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Bobby Watson, and I'm a policy advocate at Texas Impact. I manage and run all of our gun violence prevention-related projects and issues, and manage our project Vidas Robadas. So Vidas Robadas did start here in San Antonio. Rob gave a great overview of all the work we've done. I've also dropped several documents in the chat. Briefly, just to let you guys know what those are. One of them is the mission and vision, which talks about the general large goals of Vidas Robadas. Another is the San Antonio report, which talks about the first half of the work we've done in San Antonio. Since then, we've done more. We've had more installations, created more T-shirts, and done a few more events. And then there's a couple other just talk about the logistics of making T-shirts and what they look like. One piece I want to highlight to y'all on those documents is there's some talk about the cost of doing these installations. For San Antonio, there is no cost to do them. We have already purchased all of the T-shirts for all of the victims from 2018 to 2023, and we've actually almost finished making all of those T-shirts. So we're at a point now where we're trying to move these T-shirts around and highlight them. And we still have a few more we need to make, but we just want to keep these shirts up and aware and engaged with the community. The one other thing also is the main goal of Vidas Robadas is as a rallying flag. It is to connect congregations to local advocates like Councilman Courage and others for local initiatives, and also to rally around and work on statewide initiatives. The main thing Texas Impact works on is policy at the state level. So we want to continue to engage communities here to do what they can right now, and then take this momentum to the Capitol later on. And we want to try and finish creating all of the T-shirt names from 2018 to 2023 in all of these major cities. We're working on this in Austin, have done several installations there, Fort Worth, Dallas. We have created almost 1,000 there and are trying to get about 10,000 of all of those victims to the Capitol. So when you engage here in the local area, you're also a part of this larger statewide effort and are collaborating and reaching out to other congregations there. So we want you to be part of this collective and to create these local small groups. San Antonio's been so robust too. We've already had 21 installations here alone. And that community has been really engaged with this installation. They now are making ideas on their own, which is what we want, is to make these lasting foundations and relationships so that the work keeps going on and continues. So please think about doing installation, talk to Rob, talk to me, and we can work on both what's going on in San Antonio and hopefully do some more in Texas as a whole.
Well, thanks, Bobby. We're going to take just a brief pause. Those who might need to leave because they have other commitments, we always try it, and we always try to get the meat of everything before 8:30. And wow, we've really packed a lot into this half hour. So thank you to all those who
Hope you're feeling like carnivores today. Yeah.
Yeah. And so thank you for that. I hope that Rob and Bobby might be able to stay, and Millie might be able to stay on a little bit for questions as well. Next week, we're going to start in this summer series. We'll be looking at housing in 3 parts. We're going to be viewing next week the video put together by the HEB Foundation, Everyone Needs a Home. It is online, so you can go ahead and watch it, public access. It is like the best briefing I've ever heard on the housing situation in San Antonio. So come and watch it together next week, or just Google Everyone Needs a Home HEB Foundation and you'll find it. It's about 40 minutes long. The following week, we'll be hearing from Good Acres and the efforts and partnerships with the city and the community in terms of refitting and reforming congregational property into housing, community centers, creative centers, gathering spaces. I don't know, pretty much what I think everything, was meant to be in a community of faith to begin with, but refitting and reshaping those. And then the last of the 3 weeks, we'll be hearing from Mark Carmona, the Chief Housing Officer for San Antonio, and how the strategic plan has been going and housing. We just can't get there fast enough, And I just heard some stuff last night that I have not had much time to research, and I feel bad because I was not aware, but San Francisco has really been hit by a lot of things, including housing and major economy leaving. And, I'm just so proud of San Antonio. We're doing our best. We're doing everything as fast as we can, but we've got a long way to go. But we're here, we're growing, we're thriving, and it's due, I thoroughly believe, to collaborations between the faith community, government entities, businesses, schools, nonprofits, anybody who's willing to work together. So thank you, everyone who is with us this morning and those who've brought it forward. So let's go back to some comments and questions. Anything else anybody needs to say? How come I was not up to date on San Francisco is what I've been asking myself all night. But we got a lot of things, right, in our world these days. Lots of information. So, oh, look at that. There's partnering happening in the sidebar there. So good. Bobby, I'm wondering too sometime if you might come back. We were talking earlier that maybe our next series is that we take these same conversations that we're having on violence prevention and mental health and housing, all these, but take it to the next kind of state level. What's happening in that larger kind of picture. So I hope it's all right. I'm sure it is, that I'll reach back to you and we'll go that direction. I think.
Absolutely.
Yep. Sounds like a good idea. Any other thoughts and comments for this morning's topic? See, you guys did so good.
We're really grateful to have the chance to share about it. And again, any kind of institution any place could do this. We focused on congregations and faith communities and schools predominantly, but Ella Austin Community Center also did an installation. So, it can happen in other kinds of spaces as well.
Yeah.
Here
we go. Martha Ann.
I'm so glad to hear this right now because I'm working on displays for our faculty orientation, like starting August 20th. And it had not dawned on me to use the information on this. But Bobby, your reports are so beautiful. I'm going to print those out. And for when our faculty come back, I'll have them on trifolds or something like that and try to get them thinking about this from, first week on campus. And maybe they can get their classes to do some types of research or involvement or things like that. So thank you for doing this right now.
Yeah, those are perfect models, Bobby, that could be done in all the different community concerns. I mean, you put in there, like basically what can you do? Here's some information, but what are the 5 basic steps that you can take? So thank you for that model. It gives me another project to work on. I'm grateful.
Randy, did you have a question? Did I see you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, really, what I wanted to say is, Anne, I want you to come over to Madison Square and see our new parlor and the classroom upstairs that is made for things like this. And and Robert, yeah, let's get it going. This will be a small group that will grow into a big group at Madison Square.
Great. And you have a new pastor there too.
We do, and she is great.
I know, I met her. She went to the Interfaith Summit, and it was just it was like her first week or something. I thought, well, good way. She just jumped right in.
Yeah,
Let me know when it starts happening, and I will be there.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
And I haven't met her yet, and I really want to, so that'd be great.
Yeah, she's got a fresh point of view. It's wonderful to hear her.
Yeah.
Things are moving. Anything else for the good of all things good?
New Life has a question.
Okay. I don't know why you're seeing these and I'm not.
Yeah, Peter Onofre, Rob, New Life Christian
Peter.
Center. And sorry about that. Don't seem like my name's up on the picture there. But
there.
Great work. I appreciate all the efforts and how you've coordinated. And I remember when you did the presentation right before that gun exchange, and you mentioned something I think which is very valuable with the gun safes, because that is so true that's happening across the city. And you mentioned the partnership or the funding that came from COPS Metro. And did you say that's set up again? You have a date and a time when that's going to launch, or I didn't quite catch that.
So the gun exchange is being coordinated through Councilman Courage's office, and it's going to happen the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So that's when that'll happen. And we've got a meeting coming up. I've got it in my calendar on Friday the 23rd over at the Walker Ranch Senior Center to talk about that. And we'll be talking about doing another display like we did last time.
But I was actually asking about the gun safes.
Oh, the gun safes.
Yes.
I don't know when the next event is scheduled to happen. The police department are the folks who have been coordinating those, and so you may want to check in with SAPD. I don't have current information about when the next gun safe distribution is going to be.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great work.
Thank you. Thanks for your interest.
And while I was listening to the two of you in particular, my compassion critical thinking went off in my head. And one of the first compassion steps is awareness. Mm-hmm. And the second step is knowledge, get smarter. So when we look at the t-shirts, right, that's awareness, both on, it came out of individual awareness, right? And then moving into collective and community awareness, which generally, when that is sparked, leads into more knowledge acquisition, learning more, being smarter about it. And then that activation of systemically usually comes, the best of which usually comes in pretty simple steps. And it doesn't mean that they aren't difficult, but they're simple things that shift the system and then the culture. So by having, it's a simple step if you think about it. Someone turn in their gun. That's a simple step.
Yeah.
It might not be easy, but it's just turn in a gun, right? Or you lock it up. Those are simple steps, but those kind of simple steps, human steps, start to shift the system and the dominant culture. And then it's kind of like, wait for it, right? And we've seen things that have shifted. We still, they're not done with yet, right? Slavery and racism, but we do see shifts.
Yeah.
And those shifts happen by sitting down on a bus, and as much as I appreciate, the strategic plan for housing, that big plan, right? It's simple steps of providing some shelter for somebody else, thinking about the shelter you already have, the facility, and how can you change it to shelter others. It's simple human steps.
Yep.
This one's just a really beautiful example of those steps of compassion. So you've covered it and you're working it, and I'm grateful. I'm beyond grateful. Rob and I met 30 years ago, and it was around the Gang Peace Summit. But we had no idea it was going to take 30 years for the city systemically to look at violence prevention,
right,
as a whole. But it did. We waited for it, right? And we worked at it, kept working, but took 30 years. So never doubt that a small group of individuals can change the world.
The quote I have on my computer screen is nothing worth doing can be achieved in this lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. So it's a Niebuhr quote, but we got to work. We work at problems that aren't going to be solved necessarily during our lifetime, but we have to put our piece in during the time we can. So let's do it.
Great quote. There's a new message. I'll just check it quick. See, it's a thank you and a goodbye. I want to suggest at 8:42 that we close and leave in silence when you're ready for all those who have died senselessly because of guns. When you were reading the ages at the beginning, Rob, it's senseless. There's no other word. There could be some other words, but it is senseless. There's no common sense behind that. So thank you all for being here this morning. And I invite us into silence. And when you're ready to go on into the world, you can do that. So thank you for being with us.